Hello, and welcome to Commerce Reimagined. It is a series that we've been hosting here at VMLY&R Commerce to talk to people who are innovating, changing the game, pushing and challenging us in new ways to think differently about the industry and the industry that they are in. I have the pleasure today to be here with Adriana Gascoigne, who is the CEO and founder of Girls in Tech. And it's the perfect timing for me to be talking to her because I don't know when you'll be watching this, but today happens to be International Women's Day. So for the two of us anyway, this is a bit of a celebration, if you will, and a bit of a reflection moment to see about how the industry is doing against really critical issues of gender equality in the workforce, and looking to women that we care about, we look up to, and that are following us in our footsteps, and making sure that there are robust role models and careers for them ahead. So very excited to have this conversation with Adriana today. She founded the company, I believe in San Francisco, and it sounds like they're close to opening up and moving to Nashville. So for those of you in the Tennessee area, not that anything is about a local environment anymore, everything is virtual. I think she's actually joining me from Australia. This nonprofit organization has been devoted to empowering and educating and engaging women in the tech industry across 57 chapters now in 42 countries. So quite scaled. And she's no stranger to growing brands and building amazing companies. She's worked with tech companies like Indiegogo, Oracle's Involver, Change.org, and a number of other companies throughout her career. She's also a board member at WAPPP, Harvard Kennedy School of Women in Public Policy. And she's been a Singular University Impact Fellow Scholarship recipient. I love Singular University. And for those that don't know it, you should Google it and find out more. And she has a number of other accolades, including publishing her first book, Tech Boss Lady, in June 2019, which is doing phenomenally. So you can see why I'm excited to get into this conversation with Adriana today. So let's kick off a little bit by getting a view into your background, your career journey. What led you to founding Girls in Tech and brought you to this moment now?
Well, it's great to be here. Happy International Women's Day to you too. And I'm so happy to be able to talk about my passion and my day-to-day job with you. Girls in Tech is an organization that came out of a personal need, a selfish need, if you will, in 2007 when I was working at a tech startup that was much like YouTube and Netflix combined, and a little bit before its time, but I loved every day of building the product, collaborating with my colleagues, and going into the office and looking around the room. There was just such a disparity of not only our gender, because I was the only female in the company at the time, but also I was the only minority female. So there were there weren't people that represented different racial groups and LGBTQIA, and definitely not our genders. So I wanted to take it upon myself to create this organization to empower women, but also connect them, make sure that they had the opportunity to discuss and share thoughts and collaborate with their fellow women in tech, women in STEM, because honestly, we were so scarce in 2007 that I wanted to sort of bring people out of the woodworks to come together and connect, basically. In San Francisco, we had our launch event, and I didn't know what to expect. This was February of 2007, and we had over 200 women attend, which was so exciting. And just being in the room with these women, listening to their stories, trials and tribulations, issues that they're experiencing, I felt like I wasn't alone, which is always a great feeling because you do feel quite isolated and alienated, and you start thinking about what you're doing wrong, when in reality, it's the company that was not supportive of me and just recruiting diverse groups of people. So that really was the impetus. That was the start of really being inspired to create something bigger and create more sort of educational programming, create a consortium of advisors to help really support with growth strategies for the organization, and really come up with a plan of action to create this global empire of sorts that we could really impact not only people in Silicon Valley, but women around the world with our curriculum and our tight-knit community. And as you mentioned, we're now in 57 cities around the world, in 42 countries and 6 continents, with over 80,000 active members. So it's just really amazing on this day in particular, International Women's Day, to be able to share those stats with you, because in February 2007, which is 15 years ago, I never knew that it would come to this, that it would be this large, that it would become a movement, that we would have impacted so many people, so many women by now. And we still have just scratched the surface. So it's really exciting to see this, and I'm looking forward to sharing more about what we're doing in terms of programs and products and campaigns and new initiatives later on in our conversation.
So let's start getting into some of that. I mean, one, there's a global empire now. That's incredible. And you and I talked about a little bit before we got into the actual conversation. Here we are on International Women's Day, and the volume, the amount of content, the amount of buzz around it just doesn't feel like it did a few years ago. And of course, we've had a global pandemic that had a She Session that was part of that. But you made a good point about your own sort of accountability to setting tangible goals and seeing the impact and the difference. And I do want to get into that, like what you have seen that has helped your growth and the ability to really measure the progress, but then also what you still see as barriers to that progress. Because as we both said, I have a feeling, and it's not obviously substantiated yet, but maybe part of the reason why things were quieter today is because companies don't have necessarily the statistics and the measurement to stand by their promises or commitments that were made a few years ago, when it seemed like the volume was pretty loud around IWD Day.
Yeah, and you make a really good point, because in an LA Times op-ed that just came out yesterday, I do include a lot of the statistics in there about Google and Facebook and Twitter, a lot of other companies that have exposed their diversity numbers, and they're not looking that great. There's still so much room for improvement, and there's so many layers to activation around DE&I that I think one is, focusing on doing an audit, really understanding what's missing in the company, and really understanding the needs of the employees, but also really focusing on activation and implementation of those different types of tactics, whether it's policy, whether it's training, whether it's recruiting. There's just so many different layers. And like you mentioned, then tracking, right? Really understanding what the outcomes are, what the results are, what people could be doing better, rinse and repeat type thing. And that takes a lot of time, effort, and money, right? And if companies aren't willing to invest in this and be patient about the time that it takes to do all of these different pieces, these very important pieces of the DE&I implementation, then they'll never be successful. They'll never see that change that's necessary, and it has to be sustainable change. And that's what you're seeing in terms of like, hey, these numbers are still not great. 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, IWD was a lot bigger because people started to make headway. We started to see the momentum, but it could be also COVID set us back a bit as well. but we're seeing that it is not making, we're not seeing the change that we need to see, and we're not seeing the impact and accountability from corporates that we need to see. So it's, I think that is a huge part of what we need to be investing time, effort, and money into. What I see that when I observe the companies we're partnering with and companies just in general, what people are doing well is that they are taking the time to understand what diversity means for their organizations. So I don't believe in just hiring a DE&I executive and checking a box and saying that that's your strategy. I do feel that more than ever, companies are really focusing on understanding how they define diversity and how it impacts every division of the company. So that is step one, actually, even before the audit, right? And I do feel a lot of companies are doing that. I see a lot of interest in terms of starting them young. Like, we work with a company called Pegasystems, and I know AWS does this as well. They're one of our great partners. And we've worked a lot with them on their certification and training programs. So these are programs that take university students, really teach them the ins and outs of their products and services and using their platforms, and enables them to get these certifications so that they can apply for jobs, not only at AWS or Pegasystems, but other companies that might utilize their software, their technologies. And I think this is great because they're focusing on working with girls in tech primarily to bring more women into the fold, but also train and educate them and empower them. And also bring in more women from a global perspective that are racially diverse, represent the LGBTQIA community, maybe the disabled community. There are so many intersectionalities of these groups that they're really focusing on, and they're being accountable and providing these training and opportunity to have jobs at their companies. And Girls in Tech is fully there to support them every step of the way.
I would love to get a little bit more into some of the programming that you do to offer that kind of support, because something that has always struck me is the difference between fit and belonging. And I think we've so often in our careers, even when we think about our professional development stages of getting feedback for growth, it's been around, do we fit with the company? Are we culturally a fit? And I think this reframing around the notion of belonging, of having an organization that enables and allows and creates an environment where people feel like they belong, no matter what background they come from and who they are and what diversity they have to offer, feels at home, feels like there's space and room and it's celebrated, and you can be all of who you are without having to think about code switching, becomes a very powerful notion. But a lot of companies, to your point, they have stopped with certain like check the box moments that haven't allowed for that. And then what we're seeing, and I think, you referenced also earlier, one, congratulations on the LA Times piece, but I know you were involved and you were collaborating on a McKinsey study. McKinsey's done some incredible work and studies in this space, again, to really get the evidence and the data out there for people to see. But it also gets to that idea of we're losing people through the promotion cycles, really understanding those drop-off points of when an organization disconnects from the female population. Tell me a little bit more about your work in that dimension and what you're doing in your own programming to allow for and create an environment of belonging.
Yeah, I just absolutely love McKinsey and Company, and it's been a total honor to work with them for the last few years, but on the study a year plus. And the study, like you said, it really focuses on retention and really understanding the issue that the tech industry, and I would say many other industries, have in terms of retaining women at mid-level management and above. And it all focuses around promotions and the promotion cycle, upward mobility for women in the workplace. And there's so many intricacies and nuances. And in the 50 interviews that were conducted in this study and the survey results and whatnot that we reviewed, it really is different from one company to the next. But I think that the main thread that really ties all of these companies together is really taking the time to understand the nuances of employees, right? Every employee has specific needs, right? So if women in mid-level management want to have families, want to have more flexible work environments, need certain types of healthcare insurance, or need more training and support or mentorship, right? All of these things should be available to employees, and women in all groups of people should be able to tap into these resources that are sponsored and provided by their employers, right? Mm-hmm. And the study goes into detail, not only on what's happening in the workforce, what are the disparities, what are the needs, and of course, the data. I believe it's over 40% drop off of women in tech and going into mid-level management, which is really high. But actual strategies and tactics that they can employ and adopt to identify the issues and create change. So in terms of the review process, usually companies use a very traditional method of reviewing, right? It's a document that people fill out, and that document probably was created, 3 decades ago. And then you have a conversation, and then even before women go into the interview, the HR professional or whoever conducts the review, the supervisor, already knows if that person will be getting a raise or a promotion or not. They don't take the time to listen, review the questions with the person, and really understand what the needs are of that employee, what's going well, what's not going well, what they would like to see done differently. And there should be different ways of, creating a 360 feedback loop, right? I feel like a lot of times management and supervisors aren't called out for their shortcomings, right? And a lot of times when managers don't really understand how they can be better, that really impacts the communication and effectiveness of their team. And so these are things that I think we really emphasize in the report. And I think review process really stands out for me because I've really experienced it myself working at Girls in Tech and managing a team. And, in the hustle bustle and trying to get my work done, I oftentimes do not sit back and listen to what the needs are of each employee. And as said before, they're very, very different. So we've totally rejiggered and reinvented the way that we do reviews and create sort of a consistent communication channel, not just with me, but with our HR consultancy. So in case they want to share something they want anonymous, or they want to get feedback that's not their boss from, somebody that's a professional, they can go to them. So we've implemented so many different things. And what I love about this study is that it's all about action. We know the data's there. We have all of these wonderful examples. So now it's time to be accountable and take action.
Yeah, what I really like about it is it's not simple, but it's an important part of the relationship that is addressable. It is something that people can concretely focus on that could drive a disproportionate value to the women in the workforce and really actually all employees. Because think about it right now. I mean, I'm like a little bit laughing to myself as I think about the idea of performance reviews, because I can imagine how many companies that's been the thing over the last 2 years that has actually fallen away completely, because we're so focused on deliverables and efficiency and getting through the day to day. And we're not together in person. You're not having those flyby meetings, or you're not scheduling some of that really kind of one-on-one purposeful time with employees. So I think it's a really important one. And I love the fact that that's what was called out for all of us to have to kind of revisit and focus on. So I'd love to focus on a couple of your collaborations. I know you hit AWS earlier, Amazon Web Services. You've kind of touched on some of these really great partnerships and the companies that you've chosen to work with. Can you just share a few of those stories with us? Why you've chosen the companies you've chosen, what's at the heart of some of those collaborations, and maybe is there a template that's beginning to play out there that can also inspire others and how they're operating?
Yeah, that's a great question. We like I said earlier, we focus on values. We're a very value-driven organization, and we lead by empathy. Like, we take a very empathetic approach to what we do, and that's in every layer of the organization. And in deciding on collaborating with certain companies, obviously it's a brand thing. It's how they position and market themselves. But it's also the people who are at the helm of typically their DE&I divisions that we have to gel with in order to move forward. And it's just been such a joy and honor and privilege to work with these companies and these people, because at one point I was just overseeing the organization and operation as a whole. But I realized that my favorite part of the whole organization was working and collaborating with these partners, because these are professionals also with ideas, and they come with new initiatives, new campaigns, new ways to think about things, and so much passion. All the passion that they have is very authentic and very true. And they come with so much gratitude to our monthly calls that, it is very, very inspiring. So I love every minute of those calls. We've worked with, as AWS and companies like Nike, Lockheed Martin, Gap, Cisco, I'm trying to think, Pegasystems, Intel, many big names that I'm sure you've heard of. And what I love about the Girls in Tech value proposition with partners is that we can customize the partnership. And what I mean by that is we have a variety of different programs that we offer, and based on the goals and objectives of that company and that specific DE&I, or it could even be recruitment or marketing group, we're able to customize an engagement. So for example, a company that's fully interested in recruiting more women and diversifying their workforce, we focus on the digital career fair or our jobs board, or even more of the sort of technical coding boot camps, because our partners typically want to hire more technical sort of software development type women to their companies. So we customize it based on that, and we help them achieve their goals. Now, our value proposition isn't cookie cutter. We also allow for space for these companies to share what they've got going on internally. So if there's certain, like I said before, certifications or training programs or different campaigns to amplify, say, International Women's Day, we work with our partners to do that and to make sure that they can leverage the Girls in Tech community and media channels to promote their message. So it is a true collaboration. I think that in terms of, I can't stress this enough, culture and values, Girls in Tech has taken a lot of risks, and we've incorporated our partners into that risk as well. We're working with Culture Amp to create sort of an internal survey for our staff and consultants and our managing directors around the world to really understand what their viewpoints are on our corporate culture. And we're providing that data to our partners. So that's kicking off this spring. We're working with the Myers-Briggs Institute, and they just launched and piloted something called the Inclusive Leadership Training Program. And that's for leaders within the Girls in Tech community, our managing directors, staff, consultants, to really understand what it means to be an inclusive leader. So we do have like a lot of aha moments. Again, that is a training workshop, and that's something that we share also with our partners. So we try to go above and beyond and really take deep dives and very authentic dives in understanding what DE&I means to the organization specifically and how it will impact our partners.
Okay, so now I'm going to end on a kind of tricky question. This is way more about your own viewpoint on this. So we're in this interesting moment where sometimes when you call out gender, even if it's around an accolade, we hear Serena Williams say, "Don't say that I was the best women tennis player of all time. I'm one of the best tennis players, if not the best tennis player of all time." Adele said the opposite when I think one of the British Music Awards recently changed the gender accolade or award and made it a neutral one. And she said, by golly, bring back the female award. And we need to keep the focus on it. And we need to acknowledge, our up and coming great female talent. Clearly, it's built into your company and your name and your mission. We're celebrating International Women's Day. I've heard some men say, well, would it be kind of funny to celebrate International Men's Day? And obviously, it's different when you're looking for equality and you're talking about groups that are still minority representation in parts of our world. So what is your take on that? How do you deal with that? I'm sure for yourself, you're an incredible leader. We don't have to say that you're a credible female or woman leader of leaders.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like at times it's just semantics. I feel like, because we're such an inclusive organization, we invite men to be huge participants in the organization, not only as speakers and mentors and judges, et cetera, but also participate in the actual events because they're amazing, and they're amazing for all people. It doesn't matter your gender or your sexual preference or your racial background. It is important for everyone to be included, and they are. We're a very, very, very friendly organization. That said, there has been a huge disparity of women, our gender, in the STEM fields, in technology, in high tech, in startups. But that starts all the way from when you're a little girl, right? And we heard stories time and time and again that, oh, my little daughter didn't want to do the science fair, or she's not really interested in that. She wants to, do something that's not related to math or science. And that is messaging. That is the responsibility of, the parents and the teachers to really instill the "you can do it" type of attitude, those messages that empower them to be curious about the STEM fields. That onus is on them. I do feel that more and more role models come out, through Girls in Tech, other organizations, other leaders in STEM. I feel like more women, we will want to, take risks and jump into more sort of technical roles or the tech industry, so that I see is changing. But in terms of, having an organization that has girls in the name, we have had some backlash. We've had some people come to us and say, well, why would you, one, have to add a gender in your name, and two, why girls and not women, right? So there's a couple different layers there. And we do have a blog entry that highlights why I decided to name it Girls in Tech. And, just to give you a high level there, it really is the focus of a more sort of carefree, fun, easygoing, risk-taking type of mentality that when I started it, I was working at a startup and I fully embraced that girly spirit in that environment. And I'm like, wow, this is something that we need for every company. It doesn't matter if it's a startup or a large corporation. You should be empowered to be creative, be yourself, be talented, embrace every day of your job and really love it. So that part of it is something that, I spell out very clearly, and that has resonated throughout all of our chapters around the world. Now, in terms of, having an organization that empowers women because of the issues that we're seeing, I have no qualms about that at all. I think that it is important to support those that are underserved or don't have the same opportunities. And women fit that mold, right? When we see that time and time again, not only in the workforce, but in educational opportunities, things like that. So I do feel like it is very, very important for us to create a platform, a community that provides that extra support, that extra mentorship, that extra assistance for women to move forward. And, I hope I see it in my lifetime. We get to 50-50, but we're still going to continue moving forward and striving to make sure equality is at the forefront of everything that we do.
Well, I hope we see it too. I'm optimistic that we will in our lifetime, in our leadership time still. And thank you for everything that you are doing. I mean, you're making an incredible contribution. It's inspiring to hear. I think that everybody will have their eyes on girls in tech for a long time. And to your point, you have to reach down early to get the enculturating around what is possible and getting more girls into STEM programs. So thank you again. Also for others that are wanting to get a little bit more of your personal story, as you said, it's out there. It's also now in the LA Times op-ed piece. So please check that out for Adriana, and then follow her on LinkedIn at Adriana Gascoigne. So thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful to talk to you, and a wonderful way of celebrating International Women's Day.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here. Happy International Women's Day.